listening to the Kyle Mackey Podcast. Let's get this show started. Have you ever felt like something you relied on, maybe a job, a relationship, a familiar routine, suddenly disappeared or changed dramatically, leaving you lost and uncertain? What if there was a simple story that could help you understand and adapt to such change with less stress and more success? Well, we might have a fix to the situation. Thanks to Spencer Johnson and the book, Who Moved My Cheese, we have a tool that could potentially allow us to do that exact thing. So Spencer Johnson, he's an author of a simple parable that reveals profound truths about change. And that book is Who Moved My Cheese, which is a concise story about four characters navigating a maze in search of cheese, offering a unique insight into dealing with change in work and life. So the core problem and solution to this book is that we often waste immense energy resisting inevitable change, holding on to what was, and fearing the unknown, leading to frustration, anxiety, and missed opportunities. Now, the solution to this is the insights from the story's characters, Sniff, Scurry, Hem, and Haw. And it offers a framework for recognizing, adapting to, and even embracing change to find new cheese. Yes, we're going to be talking about finding cheese for this whole podcast. Now, Sniff and Scurry, they're proactively sniff out change and scurry into action, where Hem and Haw, they represent denial and resistance, more so Hem, versus learning to adapt, Haw. Now, this story has had immense impact all around the world. Its story has helped many individuals and organizations adapt to change, transforming perspective from loss to gain. So in today's episode, we're going to dig deep into this with Spencer Johnson's story, Who Moved My Cheese. We'll break down the core allegories to cheese and the maze, meet the four characters and their reaction to change, explore Haw's journey of adaptation, and finally discuss how to apply these timeless lessons to find our own new cheese in life and in work. But before we jump into all of that, actually, I'm just going to give a quick rundown of what the story is all about. So ultimately, you have Sniff, Scurry, Hem, and Haw. They're in a maze. It starts off with them all from their home base in this maze in search of cheese. And all of them quickly find it. They all get to this station they call Cheese Station C. And Cheese Station C has tons of cheese. If you're a cheese lover, this is like heaven, the cheese heaven. This is where you want to be. And when they all get there, they're all super excited because there's this abundance amount of cheese everywhere. You got brie, you got mozzarella, you got Havarti, you got Swiss, all the different types of cheese. And you think there's so much cheese there that it could last you forever. Well, when Sniff and Scurry get there, they take their shoes off, they put it around their neck, and they just start enjoying it. Hem and Haw, on the other hand, they get there and we're set for life. So they hang up their running shoes. They hide them away because they're we're not going to need these again. We're set for life. Well, unfortunately, things change. Things don't always stay the same. This cheese, although abundant in supply, was not everlasting. Eventually, the supply did run low. Got lower and lower and lower. But nobody actually noticed it. They just thought there was endless amounts of cheese. Until one day, there was none left. And so, Sniff and Scurry, being proactive and able to quickly get into action, well, they sniff and scurry out of there. Quickly off they go, and in no time at all, they find a new cheese station with what seems to be endless amounts of cheese. They didn't wait. They didn't worry. Change came, and they just went for it. And they found their new cheese. And from the sounds of it, this cheese station seemed even bigger and better than cheese station C. Hem and Haw, on the other hand, they were more reluctant. They thought that this was just a temporary thing. They're like, but this is such a great cheese station. Why would we ever want to go anywhere else? They're like, clearly, there'll be more cheese tomorrow. So they just went back home, and then the next day they came back to cheese station C. No more cheese. And for days and days and weeks and however long it makes it seem in this book, no more cheese is coming. They're getting hungry. They're getting weaker. Hem, he doesn't want to go out and search. Haw, at first he's reluctant, but as he gets weaker and weaker, then he's like, maybe I need to do this. He tries to talk Hem into coming. Hem says no. He holds back a little bit longer, and then he realizes, if I don't go, I might never find cheese again. My life might end in Station C. And so he goes for it. He goes on this big journey with reluctance and fear, but then some laughter gets going and he realizes how silly he's being. And off on this adventure he goes. On this adventure, he writes a bunch of messages on the wall. So that way, hopefully, Hem can find them one day and realize that there's new cheese out there. And so I'll just go quickly through some of the handwriting on the wall that Haw put on his quest towards this new cheese station. But he said, change happens. They keep moving the cheese. Anticipate change. Get ready for the cheese to move. Monitor change. Smell the cheese often so you know when it's getting old. I forgot to say that the cheese started to taste bad. He realized that on his journey. Adapt to change quickly. The quicker you let go of old cheese, the sooner you can enjoy new cheese. Change. Move with the cheese. Enjoy change. Savor the adventure and enjoy the taste of new cheese. And be ready to change quickly and enjoy it again and again. They keep moving the cheese. So ultimately, and Haw does find the new cheese station that Sniff and Scurry have already been enjoying for ages. Sadly, it's never officially clear whether or not Hem ever does show up. At the very end of the book, you sort of hear some rustling and some sound as if someone's coming, but they don't make it explicitly clear whether he comes or not. Hopefully he did, because if not, he'd be very weak by then. But ultimately, it's a really cool idea that you have these four characters, the two mice, the two little people, and they all react differently to the maze and finding that cheese. But ultimately, if you let fear hold you back, you'll never find that new cheese. And that new cheese might be more delicious and more exciting than the cheese you currently have, or the cheese you no longer have, since that cheese was in the past. So let's start off by going into the characters and their reaction to the change. So the allegories, the cheese, and the maze. Cheese is a metaphor for what you want in life. It doesn't have to be the cheese. It could be money. It could be promotion at work. It could be a new relationship. It could be a fast car. It could be whatever you want it to be, but it's for what you want in life. And the maze is where you look for it. So it could be, the workplace that you workplace, the organization, your family, your community, different places where you could potentially get those things that you're looking for. Maybe if it's religious, it could be like church, your spiritual peace. If it's your health, it could be a gym. So many different places in which you can get these different things in which you're searching for. Now, understanding these metaphors allows the story to apply universally to any area of life where change occurs. Now, Sniff and Scurry, they were proactive about adapting to change. These two mice represent the simple, instinctive part of us that detects change early and acts immediately. They don't overanalyze, they just move. Now, the benefit of this is that it reduces the shock of change, allows for quicker discovery of new opportunities, and avoids prolonged suffering. Sniff and Scurry noticed the cheese supply is dwindling and were prepared. When the cheese was gone, they immediately put on their running shoes. As I said, they put it around their necks, and they headed back into the maze to find new cheese. Now, Hem and Haw, on the other hand, they were different. They had resistance and just gradual adaptation. So, as I said, they're little people. They're not mice. They represent the more complex parts of us with beliefs and emotions that can lead to denial, fear, and resistance to change. Hem represents those who deny and resist change, fearing it will lead to something worse and cling to comfort and a sense of entitlement, where Haw represents those who initially resist but eventually learn to adapt when they see changing can lead to something better. So in the story, Hem yells, "Who moved my cheese?" and stays stuck, demanding the old cheese back. Haw initially joins Hem in shock and denial, but eventually questions their stagnation and decides to venture out. Now, ultimately, as I was saying earlier when I gave the description of the story, it does mostly build on the story of Haw's experience. So Haw's initial fear and reluctance to leave the comfort of Cheese Station C is a common response to change. He realized that waiting and doing nothing only makes things worse. They were starting to go hungry. They were starting to dwindle away. If he hadn't gone out and searched for cheese, eventually he may have passed away from, not getting the cheese that he needed to fuel that body. But by asking, what would I do if I weren't afraid? It can be a powerful catalyst for action. Often it's fear that holds us back from taking action. I know myself, when it comes to even just starting this podcast, fear was one of those things that sort of did hold me back a bit. I'm pretty comfortable in my life. I have a business that's doing quite well. But by putting myself out in a podcast, I put myself out to potential criticism. People could say things about me. It might take a really long time to have the success that it is. But when you can realize that this fear is just holding you back, then eventually take that action, and it can lead to beautiful and better things. So Haw's physical and mental weakening from lack of cheese and stress, his realization that his fearful beliefs were immobilizing and killing him. Then there was the power of action and self-awareness. So Haw begins to move. Even when unsure, realizing that movement itself can bring a sense of freedom and invigoration, he learns to laugh at himself and his foolishness, which is the fastest way to change. It's always good when we can laugh at ourselves for being silly and, ridiculous. We're all a little bit of silliness and ridiculousness at times to time. We all make foolish decisions. But if we can laugh at those things, it does make the whole experience a lot easier. He acknowledges his own part in the situation, realizing he hadn't noticed the subtle changes. He didn't notice that the cheese was getting bad. He didn't notice that the cheese was starting to dwindle away. But Haw putting on his running shoes after a long time, his feeling of good spirits, even without the cheese, when he began to move. I know myself, the podcast right now is really cool. Not a lot of listeners yet. Hopefully one day we'll have a lot more. But just the process of constantly learning new books, reading new books, and getting the chance to deliver that to an audience, whether small, eventually one day, hopefully large. I'm still growing. I'm still moving in that right direction. So yes, I haven't gotten that ultimate cheese that I'm looking for, but at least I'm in the progress of looking for it. And then visualizing new cheese and the adventure. So Haw uses his imagination to paint vivid pictures of finding and enjoying new cheese, which helps him overcome fear and motivates him forward. He shifts his focus from what he's losing to what he can gain. I think that's actually a really useful tool that people can do. Actually, in the journal that I have mentioned in previous podcasts that you can download for free, it's in some of the show notes for the shows. Or if you just go to actually kylejmackey.com, you can find it there too. by looking at your future and actually, drawing it out, writing out those goals, writing a story of where your life could be or where you want it to be is often a really good motivator to actually get you to take action. When you can vividly think about it, take a moment to actually look at the future and how great it might be. Sometimes it's the thing that stops holding you back and actually gets you to move forward. So the journey itself, the maze, becomes an adventure to be savored. A lot of people, there's this song by it's not a song by Alan Watts. Alan Watts is an author and he made a lot of great speeches, but there's a song that I like listening to, and it talks about a journey. It's like music is a journey, dance is a journey, but like travel, you just get yourself back to the same place and then you go on an adventure and you come on back. It's not about the adventure itself sometimes. It's like you're trying to get to a destination. But it's really cool when you're just enjoying the journey wherever it's taking you with no set end destination. And that's the cool thing about this maze. You don't really know where you're headed. You might take some wrong turns along the way. But eventually when you do get to what it is you're looking for, it's pretty exciting. But again, you don't want to just stay there. You want to keep going on the adventure because the adventure is the fun part. But Ha envisioning Swiss, cheddar, mozzarella, and brie cheese, his realization that he feels good by moving and letting go, even without new cheese yet. So at the end of this book, it talks about the lessons that they pick up through this book. So again, I read a lot of the messaging on the wall in the original story and some of the big key takeaways from Ha's adventure. But I think this is in a later edition of the book. I think if you picked up the original edition, it wouldn't have this discussion at the end. But ultimately, it might have been one of the groups that Spencer initially shared the story with. They were having a conversation at a school reunion about where all their lives went in different directions, and how there's been a lot of change, and some of that change wasn't really good in their working career, in their personal lives, in their family dynamics, and major life events. But by applying this story, Who Moved My Cheese, they were able to realize that maybe change would actually be a good thing and would allow them to succeed better in their career, in their personal relationships, in their family life. And so to start it off, the story provides a common language for organizations and individuals to discuss and adapt to restructuring, job changes, and industry shifts. And honestly, right now, with the world being sort of all over the place when it comes to jobs being cut with AI and stuff like that, this is probably a really important thing for most people to be able to adapt better to. Change is coming. It always is. We've gone through many periods of immense change in the workplace, but realizing that this change might actually lead to better opportunities and a brighter future is, a great mindset to have. So, if you lose your job, taking it as an opportunity to make life even better, maybe start a business that you've been thinking to start, maybe, focus on some other projects, find a job that's more in line with where the future is heading to make it so AI and robots don't take over your career. It can lead to brighter and better things. So the two examples that they have in this book, they're a little bit older, the book, so they don't necessarily apply as much today. But if you just changed it for AI, it would make all the same sense. But Michael's company used the story to help employees, people like Sniffs and Scurries and Hems and Haws, adapt to new visions and strategies, even letting go of those who wouldn't change. So they were like a retail store before all the big box stores came out, and they just didn't change to coincide with those other organizations as well. And so they were really struggling, and he felt like the business might actually go under. And then there's Jessica, whose company resisted putting, this is going to show how old it is, encyclopedias on discs, which is funny because we don't really use encyclopedias and we don't really use discs anymore. So this book is clearly a while ago. But funnily enough, I'm not old enough to say I haven't. No, I am old enough to say I've used both encyclopedias on books and discs. So I know now we just use Wikipedias, which is technically not probably as accurate of an encyclopedia, but it is probably what most people go to nowadays. But ultimately, by her company not making this change of putting it onto disc because they're like, books are worth a lot more money, discs are no pennies, it led to their decline and showing the cost of not adapting when, yes, they might have not made as much, but maybe they would have sold more of them and they might have actually made more money in the end. Then there's the personal relationships. So old cheese in relationship might be old behaviors or patterns. The new cheese could be a new relationship or a new, better way of interacting with existing ones. So again, Jessica considered her current relationship as old cheese with serious mold. I'm sure we've all dated somebody where we feel like that's the case. It's got issues, but those issues might be from the past that we're just still living in. But I think a lot of relationships, they don't evolve and grow. They don't look for the new and better things that are to come. They just get stuck about, oh, back in the day when I first met you, you were this and now you're not. It's like people don't stay the same. People change, people grow, people become different versions of themselves. And if you hold on to the original idea of the person that you met and don't allow it to grow and become a partner who's more adapted for that new, better, hopefully, version of them, it's going to hold the relationship back. Again, you're going to change. Your partner's going to change. The relationship as a whole should go forward. And you should look for those new and beautiful, cheesy relationships in the future. But the idea that instead of letting go of that relationship, one might need to let go of old behaviors causing the problems. I think that's a beautiful thing to have. Again, it's might be old behaviors that are actually holding it back. But maybe if you change things about yourself and allow yourself to adapt to the relationship, it might actually lead to a better relationship as a whole. And then there's family dynamics and major life events. So the parable helps families cope with significant change, like moving to a new city, providing a framework to discuss fear and future possibilities. So in the book, one of the people in the discussion, Becky, her son, was upset about moving from Illinois to Vermont, leaving friends. But eventually he found new interests and happiness, demonstrating that change can lead to better outcomes. And these changes have actually made a big impact on his life. So they moved from a place with not a lot of snow to where there's mountains and stuff like that. And eventually got into skiing or snowboarding, something on the mountains, really loved the mountains, ended up making it. So he went to Colorado and joined his university ski team. And if it wasn't for moving to Vermont in the first place, where there are some mountains, he would have never had these opportunities to take part in this new activity, this new sport that he ends up really loving, and moving to Colorado where it's even more mountainous and he gets to enjoy his adult life on the mountains. And I can say from experience, being on the mountains is pretty great. It's probably one of the things I miss the most about Canada. And yeah, being ready for those little changes again, looking for the positives in all the situations and realize that sometimes new cheese is better than the old cheese. Sometimes there's better things out there. I know myself, like when I watch TV and things like that, I sometimes rewatch old shows just because I know I like it. But then every once in a while you watch a news show and it's just like, damn, that's some good new cheese. Yeah. It's interesting calling this all as cheese. Yeah. So I guess one of the big things from this whole book is that we need continuous adaptation. The ultimate goal of Who Moved My Cheese is to shift your mindset from a fixed view of cheese to one of continuous awareness and readiness for change. Life is not going to stay the same. Life is going to always throw you curveballs. It's always going to be moving in different directions. If you try to stay in one place, you're going to be probably pretty unhappy with that because it's nearly impossible. Now, the analogy is being like a Sniff and a Scurry, always inspecting for change and keeping your running shoes ready allows you to stay ahead, which is a great approach to have. Be ready for that change, and when the change comes your way, just go for it. But true success and peace comes from anticipating change, adapting quickly, and realizing that there is always new cheese out there. When you move past your fear and embrace the adventure. Life is beautiful. There's so much good opportunity out there. my life has changed so much in my 17 years as an adult. As I first went into the adult life, obviously it was university. I was a runner, then coach, spent 14 years in fitness. I've moved around the world. I've worked in a bunch of different countries. I've had many failed businesses. And sometimes thinking back about that old cheese, like that first failed business, it held me back for a while. It made me scared to take risk in case I had another big failure, because it was pretty devastating. I was like $53,000 in debt. But realizing that fear that was holding me back wasn't allowing me to embrace the adventure of life. When you can get over that, great things come your way. So now I have, a successful marketing company, and I'm able to start things like this podcast, which if I just held back of fear based off, one big failure, worried about that old cheese, never letting it go, life wouldn't be the way it is today. So I guess some of the key takeaways I want people to be able to walk away from today's episode is that change is inevitable. Anticipate it. Cheese always runs out or gets moved. Stay alert to small changes to prepare for the bigger ones. Fear is a choice. Action frees you. Don't let fear paralyze you. Ask, what would I do if I weren't afraid? And move in a new direction. Laugh at yourself. Adapt quickly. The fastest way to change is to laugh at your own foolishness and release your grip on what's gone. Visualize new change. Again, grab that journal that you can get from kylejmackey.com and give it a try. Do that image of where you want to be, like when you're 80 years old. Obviously, that's really far into the future. But realize it's not going to stay the same, or it shouldn't stay the same. Hopefully there's a lot of new cheese along the way. Maybe a cheese that you've never even heard of before. Something that's super delicious. But imagine and focus on the positive outcomes of change to motivate action and overcome reluctance. And then move with the cheese. Don't just react. Be proactive. Keep things simple. And embrace the adventure of finding new opportunities. So I challenge you this week to identify one area where you are resisting a change or holding on to that old cheese. Think about the new cheese and what it might look like in that area. And then choose one small step you can take today to go into that maze and begin your journey towards that new cheese. Start small, but start today. Don't wait. Take that one action. So, I hope you guys have enjoyed today's episode. It's another short one. I've had 2 short episodes in a row because I had to jam them all into a 1-week period as I'm out of the country for the next couple weeks. But again, I'm going to keep to that episode schedule of at least one every other week for now, and eventually hopefully bump it up to one every week. But even though I'm away, I don't want anybody to miss out for the people who are listening. But I hope you guys are learning from these episodes. I hope you guys are implementing something into your life which is leading to positive change. Feel free to put some comments out there of how these podcasts have benefited you in some sort of way. Maybe suggest some books that you'd like me to explore. And hopefully we'll also get some new guests coming on in the next few months. Ideally, that'll be the thing that'll help me get to doing episodes more frequently, possibly on a weekly basis. But again, thank you so much for tuning in. Again, if you want to check out the book, it's Who Moved My Cheese by Spencer Johnson. You can also check out his website, whomovedmycheese.com, for additional resources, interactive programs, and other related products. But then, thanks so much for tuning in, and I look forward to having you back here in another 2 weeks' time.
Thanks for listening. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.